Participants in the 9th Conference of the Parliament of the Islamic Cooperation Organization's member states held in Tehran have asserted that Takfiri thought actually serves the objectives of Zionism. The Syrian Arab Army eliminates dozens of terrorists in Damascus countryside and Daraa and tightens control on the areas in Hama and Aleppo. The denunciation of the terrorist crimes and in support of the national principles and the Syrian Arab Army, huge marches are staged in Hama and Homs. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our news for today. In the Iranian capital Tehran, the activities of the 9th Conference for the Parliament's Union of the Islamic Cooperation Organization countries, with the participation of Syria's delegation headed by Speaker Mohammad Jihad al-Laham, the participants underlined the importance of cooperation and coordination among the Islamic countries in order to fight terrorism and to prevent attempts that aim at distorting the image of Islam. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that the danger of terrorism and extremism threatens all Islamic countries and that the Zionist enemy is the main beneficiary of the spread of terrorism in the world. For his part, head of the Iranian Shura Council, Ali Larijani, asserted that the repercussions of terrorism affect the people in Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan more than any other part of the world. Lebanese Speaker of the Council of Representatives, Nabih Berri, stressed that the terrorism that strikes the region is supported internationally and by Israel, pointing out that enhancing the joint work of the Islamic Cooperation Organization will be determined by Syria's recovery of the crisis and on restoring the Palestinian cause as a central for the Islamic world. Other speeches in the conference called on intensifying efforts and boosting the joint Islamic work. Representatives of 47 countries took part in the conference, in which they will discuss over 2 days the most important issues in the Islamic world, mainly the Palestinian issue, fighting terrorism, as well as the announcement of the Islamic Parliament and the final communiqué. Referring to a telephone conversation between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry today, the Russian Foreign Ministry said the talks centered on a series of international topics, including the situation in Syria. Lavrov had yesterday affirmed in a press conference held with his Eritrean counterpart Othman Saleh in Moscow that there is no other alternative to Geneva I in order to reach a solution to the crisis in Syria. Therefore, Lavrov added, Russia has been always calling for bigger efforts that should be exerted to realize this solution. Lavrov said the USA did not perform its assigned role during the Geneva II talks and convinced only one side of the opposition to attend. Welcome back. On the ground in Damascus countryside, the Syrian Arab Army has eliminated a large number of terrorists in Yabrood, inflicting heavy casualties among them. Identified among the killed terrorists were a Saudi nicknamed Abu Malik, leader of the operations of the so-called Islamic Front, and Samir Nasrullah Rahmoun, leader of the so-called Interior Security Militia, as well as Mahmoud Arouq, who is nicknamed as Abu Ali al-Yabroodi, in addition to Anas Aboud and Rukn Mithqal Hammame from the so-called Asham Freemen movement. In Aleppo, the Syrian Arab Army has maintained control on Sheikh Najjar after eliminating the last gatherings of terrorists there and destroying their hideouts. The Syrian Arab Army also took control of al-Ghali and Syriat al-Hills and the surrounding area, forcing the armed groups to flee. The operation assumes special importance as Tallet al-Ghali Hill outlooks Al-Ma'saraniya and Al-Sakhur highway considered as an important path for the armed group's supplies. Syriatel Hill also outlooks Hanano neighborhood and the industrial town in Sheikh Najjar, as well as Aleppo central prison. Several armed men were killed and wounded in the area, particularly in the surroundings of the prison, as well as in Aquarius, Rasm al-Abboud and Kafr Saghir. The Syrian Arab Army units have meanwhile eliminated all the members of terrorist groups in Al-Marj and Qadi Askar neighborhoods and the surroundings of Al-Khusrufiyya Mosque. In Daraa, Syrian Arab Army soldiers killed all members of a terrorist group on the road of Nimr al-Hara in the countryside of the governorate. The citizens of Al-Salamiyya in Hama countryside and the Palestinians in the Palestinian refugee camp in Hama have staged marches in support of the Syrian Arab Army and in denunciation of Man massacre perpetrated by the terrorists.
In Salamiyya in Hama countryside, a huge march has been staged in support of the national principles and the Syrian Arab Army in its war on terrorism. The participants in the march affirmed their full stand on the side of the homeland, which has been witnessing the most vicious conspiracy, and their support for the Syrian official delegation who participated in the Geneva II conference. They also hoisted Syrian flags and raised placards affirming that the attempts to sow sedition and plant hatred among the Syrians have failed, as the Syrians have always set an example of coexistence and national unity. Al-Salamiyya citizens also denounced all the terrorist massacres perpetrated against the Syrians, the last of which was in Ma'an. Denouncing the massacre committed by the terrorists in the village of Ma'an and protesting against the terrorist siege of the Palestinian refugees camp in Syria, the Palestinians of the refugees camp in Hama staged a huge march asserting their rejection of foreign interference and emphasizing the need to face the conspiracy against Syria. The participants in the march hoisted Syrian and Palestinian flags and raised placards expressing their condemnation of the terrorist attacks in Syria. They also shouted slogans highlighting the sacrifices of the Syrian Arab Army soldiers in the face of terrorism.
The Syrian Arab Army has tightened full control on Man village in Hama northern countryside, eliminating the last gatherings of the terrorists who had committed a massacre against civilians that claimed the lives of dozens of citizens, the majority of whom were women and children. The national reconciliation process spreads across Syria to reach the towns of Babila, Yalda and Beit Sahim in Damascus countryside. The governorate's workshops started to rehabilitate the infrastructure in these areas as convoys of the Syrian Arab Red Crescent started to enter Babila carrying assistance and food parcels. Meanwhile, and as part of the national reconciliation process, the cases of many citizens in these towns were settled as the residents asserted the necessity to stop bloodshed and emphasized their rejection of terrorism, stressing that the Syrians alone had the right to determine their future. The Minister of Culture held a photos exhibition about the town of Ma'loula in Al-Asad House for Culture and Art. The exhibition demonstrated the rich cultural heritage of that historical town.
The goal of this gallery is not to bring back the smile as much as to make the people remember how our country looks like. The greatness of our history and culture, the greatness of every stone in Syria. Ma'loula is not an ordinary place. It is the memory of history, the land of religion. Therefore, it has a special place in our hearts and wides great memories in our history.
هي حكاية معلولة عمرها من 60,000 سنة.
Ma'lula, the story of 60,000 years old. It's from the oldest villages in Syria. It developed by time, and they built their houses from stone. And then Christian and Islamic people came in. Ma'lula is one of the Syrian symbols. Art is the soul of this universe, and these young men are keeping our world amazing and beautiful with their amazing talents and amazing arts. Dan al-Imam for the Syrian National TV News in English.
With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Nariman Qassam, but after a short break.